What's up, guys? This is Chris here from Honest Outlaw, and today we're not going to be doing a review. Today I'm going to at least attempt to help you out with your pistol accuracy. Oh, I got a bull. I've shot a lot of guns in my life, particularly handguns. I get the luxury of shooting a lot more than the average person and putting a lot more rounds down range. And in that time, I have strived to become a better and better pistol marksman. And along the way, I have taken advice from almost every major source that you can find. I've taken pistol classes, I've went to competitions, I've shot with very good shooters in real life, I've taken tactical classes, I've shot against great people, I've done many things to increase my pistol accuracy, and I've learned a few helpful tips along the way, and also some things that don't work so well. A while back we did a list on the top 5 shooting tips I thought were bullshit. Well, here's a few tips that are not bullshit. As a matter of fact, they are some of the tips that help me improve my pistol accuracy, especially at distance. So I wanted to run through a few with you guys today, some that are skill-based, some that are equipment-based, and just some things that can help you get to whatever goal you're really looking for. Now you have to understand that realistic pistol accuracy and then accuracy that we're striving for on this video might be a little bit different. The FBI will tell you that pistol engagements happen within 7 yards, and as long as you can shoot a fist-sized group at 7 yards, you're good to go. Well, me, I like to be prepared for any situation, really, whatever distance, whatever firearm. And today we're also going to be talking about switching back and forth between not just your firearm, but maybe somebody else's. Before we get into the video, I do want to mention this Patron supporters as always. Patron is the best way to support the channel. It's the way we pay for a lot of the guns and ammunition, and I really appreciate you guys. Without you guys, we wouldn't have near as much content. I can't thank you enough. If you want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. You just go to the link in the description and sign up. And I also want to mention a local shelter in Ames, Iowa. It's the YSS. It could really use your support. Dear to my heart, so if you go down there and give those kids a couple of bucks, you're doing a good thing, and you'd be helping them out too. So let's get into number 1 here, and we'll start with your trigger finger. Your trigger finger is the interaction with you and the firearm. So it is the most important thing that is touching the gun. And what I mean by that is a lot of people talk about sight acquisition, sight alignment, grip, all that stuff, but the reality is the end all be all when it comes to pistol accuracy is trigger control. If you can control that trigger, and that is the wordage that I want to use, trigger control, not pulling the trigger to the rear. You want to control that trigger straight to the rear all the way back to the end of the gun to hear that hammer fall without disturbing those sights whatsoever. And there's a few different ways to do that, and there's a few different techniques that I like to use, but the first thing we're going to have to try to figure out is what particular grip and particularly where the trigger, where your trigger finger sets on the trigger for you. Now, there's a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to putting your finger on the trigger, and I know that's kind of crazy because you think you would just put it on there, pull the trigger in whichever way it works best, but there's so many different schools of thought. There's so many different people who've made their career one way or the other, and I'm not here to shit on any of those people. I'm here to say use all those resources and find out what works best for you. And I'll give you an example. This is a Beretta 92. Beretta 92's got a big old grip on it, so I can put the ideal portion of my finger on the trigger. A lot of people say you want to put your pad of your finger on the trigger because it has the most nerve endings. Some people say that you want to pull it like this. Some people say you want to put your trigger in the crook of your trigger finger and pull it like this. Some people, like Travis Haley, for example, tell you to worm the trigger down. And some people, like Pat McNamara, tell you to put the trigger finger all the way in the trigger guard as far as you can and pull it like this. I'm here to tell you that all of those things work because all of those people are very good at shooting. It's just a matter of what you can do yourself. Me, I've got really long, gangly Jack Skellington fingers. They look ridiculous, and because of that I cannot use the pad of my finger on most guns, and if I do, even on this Beretta, as you can see here, I don't know how well you can see that, but when I put the pad of my finger on the trigger and I pull the trigger, I am doing that worming Travis Haley style motion. I am not a fan of having my trigger finger all the way in the trigger guard, but I'm not going to refute that because Pat McNamara is a phenomenal shot, and many bullseye shooters also use that technique, and they can outshoot me, so who am I to talk shit? That being said, this way works for me because I am not a bullseye shooter. I am a mix between speed and accuracy. I like to shoot accurately, but I like to do it as fast as possible. So I've developed my grip and my trigger control to work for me. The pad of my finger works for some guns, like this, but it sure as hell isn't gonna work for this gun. So even if you find the correct trigger placement for your particular gun, it might be different on different guns depending on the reach of the trigger from the back of the grip. As you can see there, if I put my pad of my finger on this, it gets so unwieldy to try to pull the trigger that I end up going crook of my finger, and it's the same basic pull as the Beretta. It's just further down my finger. But it mimics the exact same motion that I'm used to on the larger pistols, so I get the same basic accuracy even with the smaller guns. That's one of the reasons why I'm able to shoot small guns so far away, is because I'm essentially shooting them in a similar fashion that I would shoot larger guns. Now, that's the first tip. The second tip goes along with that, and that is your grip is more important than you think it is. When we talk about trigger control, we talk about just the trigger finger interfacing with the trigger, but the reality is controlling the trigger requires two hands to do it correctly. The way you can shoot really fast and still be accurate is to control the gun, which will control the trigger. If the gun does not move, the trigger doesn't come off the sights. See where I'm going with this? So if you build your grip like this, and the gun is so rock solid that no matter how much you slap the trigger, the gun doesn't move, the sights are still on the target, and the bullet still hits the target. So there's two different ways to do this, and I like a mix of both, because you can't always have perfect trigger control, especially when you're moving really fast. Not just shooting really fast, but moving really fast. In between reloads, all kinds of shit happens in a USPSA match, IDPA match, anything like that, especially a real life scenario, where you could be ducking behind cars, shooting underneath buildings, whatever it's gonna be, right? So you wanna be able to have that accuracy, not just in your perfect stance at your 25-yard range where you're shooting slow fire at a bullseye target. You want to have that accuracy all the time, and the way to do that is develop a good grip, because that left hand that's not doing anything as far as recoil or as far as accuracy goes can control the recoil, control the gun, and make it easier on your booger hook. So I like to ride the gun really high, very similar to like the modern samurai grip. People think that's like a new grip, but that's like a competition grip that's been going on for a really long time. Get as high as possible on the gun, control the axis of the gun, use your support hand, just like Jerry Michalik says, if your support hand's not sore at the end of the practice day, you're not using it. So you want to get that left hand in there that's not doing anything as far as dexterity goes, and you want to use that to control the gun. So keep the gun in here, keep it in tight, no space between any of the gun, don't give the gun any chance to move whatsoever, and then when you're pulling that trigger to the rear, even in double action, boom, and it hits. All right, so now we're at about 60 yards here. We're trying to hide from the wind a little bit, and I'm gonna try the first shot at double action. All right, I'm gonna decock it. I'm gonna try the second shot at double action. Try it again. Because your grip controls the gun, and you're also using good trigger control, and that is the key to success when it comes to pistol accuracy. Now, number 3 is gonna go along with 1 and 2. What a surprise. Number 3 is going to be not only just first one, find your trigger technique, second one, find that grip, third one, dry fire practice with those things. Now you have to understand with dry fire practice, it isn't the end all be all. You can't just dry fire practice in your house for a year and then shoot once in a while. You have to actually vet dry fire practice to make sure you're practicing the right things. Same concept as, you know, football practice, basketball practice. We do drills, but then we vet it with either sparring or practice or a scrimmage or whatever it's gonna be. So that is one thing you have to remember. You can do a lot of dry fire practice for free, and I definitely recommend that. You can work on everything in dry fire practice but recoil control. And you can get really good at accuracy with dry fire practice, but if you don't vet it with real life shooting on the range, especially with a timer, which we'll get to here in a little bit, you can actually be practicing the wrong things and find out you went all week trying something new, and once you get out on the range, you actually don't like it. So make sure that you vet it with actual shooting, but dry fire practice is very important. And the way to do that safely is get rid of the magazines, get rid of the ammunition, unless you're doing reload practice, which you can do with dummy rounds, things like that. But make sure you have no live ammunition anywhere near the gun, and you basically just take the gun and you find something small, whatever distance away you want to practice with. I often use light switches because there's many light switches in my house. I live in the middle of nowhere, so a lot of areas are safe for me to point an empty gun. Keep that in mind. If you're in an apartment, you don't want to be dry firing at the next apartment. It's not very nice of you. That being said, you find a small spot in a safe area and you simply put the gun on the thing, build your grip, get your good trigger control on the trigger, focus on that front sight or dot, whichever, or target, whichever one you want to do, and you just simply watch the sights, pull the trigger all the way to the rear, and if the trigger breaks with your sights still on the target, theoretically, you hit the target. And that is a good way to build up muscle memory, because that is mostly what marksmanship is. When some guy shoots very quickly at 50 yards, he's not working through the thought process on how to do that in his head. He pulls the gun up and the gun does what it needs to do because that is what he has built in his practice. You never rise to the level of the occasion, you just rise to the level of your practice. I learned that when I was very young, and it holds true today with everything that I've done. Practice makes perfect. There is no way to get around that. Some people have some advantages on other people. Yes, some people are bigger, stronger, so recoil control is easier. Some people have the right finger size or the right hand size for their gun, so accuracy comes out a little bit easier. Some people have to go through a couple guns to find the right gun, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, equipment doesn't really matter. If you take somebody that's only shot for a few weeks and you give them an Atlas Gunworks whatever, and you give me a high point, there's a pretty good chance I'm gonna outshoot them because I've got 100 and some thousand rounds down on pistols in the last few years. Fast enough, I suppose. You just need to get out there and practice to whatever level of proficiency that you find that you want to be, whether that be competition ready, tactically ready, law enforcement, military, whatever that is. You have to go out there and dry fire for that particular situation. So if you're dry fire practicing for concealed carry, you're going to want to add in some draw practice from your concealed carry holster. If you're dry fire practicing for law enforcement, you're going to want to add in a bunch of reps with your actual duty holster, but then actually wear your shit as well, because the last thing you want to do is do a bunch of draw practice and find out your dry fire practice drags you right into your load bearing equipment, whatever that is, plate carrier or whatever. I've seen some people do that, and that's really funny. But my point is you practice for whatever situation you think you might be most likely to find yourself in. Now the fourth thing I want to talk about is kind of cheating, but it's going to go along with the previous three. It is calculated practice. And a lot of people go out there and they shoot and they have fun, and that's great. And they work on their strengths. But if you want to be a good marksman, you have to work on your weaknesses as well. And not only do you have to do that, but you have to do that in a calculated manner. You have to keep track of what distances you can easily shoot at. You have to keep track of what times that you have on specific drills. The way to do that is not only have like a notebook or a journal, but also video yourself if possible. It's awesome to look cool on the gram anyway, but the reality is one of the best things I've ever done in my life as far as my shooting is create a YouTube channel, because now I can see me either have success or have failure and figure out why. I mean, it's not hard to figure out how you're missing if you can look at your grip and trigger control for an entire magazine at a certain distance, you know? So if you film yourself, not only that, but time yourself, you also know if your split times are increasing. Time is relative, and it can be weird, and unless you put it on a timer, you might have a different perception of how well you're doing. So it's always good to vet these things with not only time, but vet these things with consistent drills as well. I like to run similar drills, including a bill drill. I love the bill drill for working on speed and recoil control while also maintaining accuracy. There's several drills that we're going to be doing here this summer, because I'm actually going to start doing a series on some of my favorite drills. The Mozambique drill, lots of other things that apply to many shooting skills, but mostly to marksmanship. And as long as you use a journal, use a timer, you video yourself, however way that you want to record your practice, I think that that is an invaluable asset that most people don't take advantage of. And another thing to add to that is something like the Mantis system. You can also use your phone to record off that. You can use that to record your hits or misses during dry fire practice. And that, I did a video a while back on that, but that is one of the best ways that you can consistently train in a dry fire situation and really get the most out of it. And number 5 is for sure cheat because it's actually a piece of equipment, but it is arguably the piece of equipment that will propel your accuracy the most, and that's going to be a red dot. I don't like to recommend equipment to make you a better shooter, but the reality is some things will. It's not going to make you a more skilled shooter, but it is going to make it easier for you. Red dots have a few things that they really have going for them that's nice. First off, the standard threat response of a human being. If you see something that scares you in front of you, your body's going to focus on it, and there's going to be no way you're not going to be able to. And as many times as you've practiced repetition looking at a front sight, it's going to be very difficult to do. Whereas a dot, you simply superimpose the dot over the target you're already focused on, pull the trigger, and hopefully that target stops doing whatever you didn't want it to do. So not only does it help in that situation, but it helps tremendously as far as adding one point of aim, simplifying the overall sight picture, and allowing you to superimpose that over targets while maintaining a better sight picture than you would have before. Not only are you not covering up the target that you're trying to shoot at certain distances, but you're just allowing for a smaller, finer, more easier to recognize for your brain point of aim that you can put on a target. Even above that, you can zero it. You can zero a red dot up, down, left, and right. And a lot of guns don't come zeroed from the factory. And as many times as you shoot it, let's say you shoot a gun and it's just still a little bit low, or still a little bit high, or still a little bit right, still a little bit left. When a stressful situation happens, you may forget that tucky windage and then shit goes out the window. We've done that a bunch of times with review guns. I found out a gun hits a particular place at a particular distance, and then a couple of months later when I bring the gun back out to shoot it, I have to go through the whole learning process all over again. Whereas if I had a dot, I could have just zeroed it to that day, and that would have been that. There are failure points in dots, there are cons to dots, but one of the biggest pros by far is accuracy and sight acquisition. So make no mistake, if you are stagnant in your practice and you practice for years and you're looking for just a little bit of a help up over the fence, a red dot might be able to do that for you, especially for aging eyes where that can even come into play more. Those are 5 tips that can help you out with your pistol accuracy. If you want to see more tips, I got plenty, believe me. Just leave it in the comment section below. If you want to see different videos on how to improve your marksmanship, your speed, your accuracy, your reloads, whatever you might want to see, let me know that in the comment section below as well. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.